Time travel is generally considered jumping the shark, and I don't disagree with that sentiment. It's really difficult to include time travel in any kind of story, much less an improv story like D&D. That being said, the very fact that I've said you probably shouldn't do it means that somebody out there just decided that they're going to do it. It's inherently what happens. I say don't do something and somebody says, I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Don't you do it.
I'ma do it.
Don't you do it.
And so this video, I guess, is technically for you, you crazy madman. Let's talk about it. Now, before we get any further into the video, I want to go ahead and thank my sponsor, G Fuel. And I thought really long and hard about how to actually advertise G Fuel, and I came up with what is just a great idea with no problems, and it will go over flawlessly.
Okay, I'm gonna be absolutely 100% honest. My wife wouldn't let me do this inside, weirdly enough. So, full disclosure, I don't know how to shotgun. I've never had this flavor before. G Fuel just sent me a bunch of stuff, and I figured, what's a better way of supporting them than making an absolute fool out of myself? That'll make you guys want to buy something, right? So, like, legitimately, I've never shotgunned anything, so we're just gonna... This is such a bad idea.
Did you open the front?
Oh, I got my eye.
Okay, you're supposed to open the tab too.
Well, hey, that's the shot we got.
Are you okay?
I can't open that. I'm about to go blindly turn on the sink. You know, that first strike I made was way more effective than I anticipated. Is it still recording?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Alright, take two. I got it out of my eye. We're gonna get that. It's the dumbest ad. Oh, that is so carbonated. It tastes good though.
What flavor is it?
Watermelon limeade by G Fuel. Probably...
Actually show the label, maybe?
Oh yeah, it probably won't kill you. It's killing me. Cut the camera.
The reason time travel is so difficult to handle is because, one, the entire concept is something that even theoretically is incredibly hard to wrap your mind around. There are so many ways of considering how it might actually function. Does it function in a way where if you've time traveled that had to happen in the first place and the time stream is always continuous? Or can you change time? And if so, are you creating alternate universes or destroying the universe you were originally in? Or is it something in the middle? The simple fact is time travel is incredibly difficult to take care of and handle even in a theoretical sense. So trying to create a story where the rules need to be set out and understood in order to be able to create it in the first place is, well, almost near impossible. Now, full disclosure, I have put time travel in one of my D&D campaigns before. In fact, the very first D&D campaign I ever ran, because I was an arrogant fool who decided to jump the shark like 4 or 5 different times in that entire campaign. To my players who played with me through that entire 2.5 years, thank you. I really don't deserve you guys for sticking with me through that, and I learned my lessons. But that being said, D&D is an improv game, which makes it almost impossible. In fact, I would say it is impossible, but that doesn't mean you can't fool around with it at least a little. First, let's talk about what could even cause time travel in a D&D campaign. The first one that I'm sure everybody immediately thought of is Wish. The Wish spell has the ability to do some crazy things, breaking the rules of physics, time, and magic in general. It lets you do almost anything, and thus, technically, you could wish to go back in time. Generally, I would just recommend if there is any sort of time travel in your campaign, just go ahead and accept the rules that time travel will change the future. Do not try and make it this whole cohesive, oh, it will always have happened type of thing, because the only way that you can do that is to essentially just railroad the players. If they go back in time and kill an NPC, trying to figure out how that NPC is then alive in the future just isn't going to work out so well. You can try and create some sort of weird stuff around it, but it will typically always feel contrived. It doesn't mean it's not possible, it just means the stars kind of align to make it possible, otherwise it's never going to happen in the first place.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
So with keeping in mind that that's generally how you're probably going to want to handle it, you then have to decide how the campaign is going to be adjusted because you've allowed time travel in the first place. Like I've stated, once you've allowed them to go back in time, the events of the future are now in flux. They're going to be able to change things. And so you have to accept 2 things. One, your improv chops are about to be tested. You just have to accept that you're going to have to adjust this because you allowed them to time travel in the first place. Or you don't allow them to time travel. It's easy enough to say that there's some sort of rule of magic which doesn't allow it, but I feel that's sort of a cop-out and kind of stunts your players. Instead, I would represent and show them in-game why it's not possible. Have them attempt to do so and have a god show up to prevent them from doing it, or something similar. Make sure that it's clear, hey, I'm not just making this up, there's a literal force in the world that wants to stop you. And if you really want to try and time travel, you're gonna have to get through them.
Don't someone mess with time. You don't with time, mother.
Which, you know, knowing D&D players, they'll probably still try and do it, but at least that's a fun adventure and gives you a few sessions to be able to, well, I don't know, decide how the time travel is going to go in the first place. You're at least buying yourself time and a few combat encounters.
I will mess with time. I will mess with time.
But if they do go back in time and they're still allowed to change things, here's what I did. When I put it in my campaign, I had the players split. 2 of them went into the past and 3 of them stayed in the future. God, that was dumb. Don't ever do that. Maybe it was 4 of them. I don't quite remember. This was a long time ago. Point is, I then had to decide how I was going to handle that. And what I decided was that actually 2 of the players had been shot forward in the future, therefore I didn't have to mess too much with the timeline, and those in the present had to help them out with the future. What this meant is I could still keep it as a continuous timeline. However, I had to be very careful with what was going to happen. The players in the present had to succeed on their mission in order to bring those in the future back. If they didn't, I kind of just killed 2 PCs and it wasn't really their fault. So what did I do? I just was honest with the players. I told them quite honestly, hey, I'm going to be a little bit railroady here because this is what I need to do to bring you guys back together, or we can retcon the time travel. I did put that down as an option, and they told me they wanted to stay where they were going because they didn't want to retcon. Great, now I have buy-in from the players to be a little bit railroady to get things back in order. Again, I was a new TM and I had really dug myself into a hole. And if you dig yourself into a hole, your option is pretty much just to talk to your players. They should be willing to work with you on this and help be flexible in order to be able to make the entire story cohesive and fun for everybody. And so that's what I did. I went and had the players in the present go seek out a wizard who would be able to assist them on their adventure. The wizard was very helpful. They had to go on a few quests, gather a bunch of items so that they could create a portal which the players in the future would then be able to return back to. They then left a note in the present that would go all the way to the future, which the future players then found, which let them know, hey, we're going to create a portal and you have to get to this location at this time. There were stakes, there was an adventure, we all knew what was happening, and to make sure I was able to really clearly communicate between the 2 parties, I actually had one of the NPCs in the future be one of the PCs from the past, with the player's permission, of course. What this meant was every time that I ran a session for those in the present, I was able to tell those in the future through that NPC what they were doing and where they needed to go. Was it a little bit cheap? Sure. But that's why you really don't want to mess with time travel. I did warn you at the beginning of the video. It is the most shark jumping thing you could possibly do, but if you're really determined to do it, this is kind of the stuff you gotta do to make it work out. Eventually the 2 groups did end up going to the same area, the group in the past managing to open the portal, the group in the future going through the portal, and then I had something for the future follow after them, therefore creating a giant combat encounter as all of them came back together, creating a sort of through line through the whole thing. Yes, they had changed and leveled up while they were in different times, but now they were together, strong, and as a party again. It was the best way I could cohesively tie it all together. I know most of my videos are usually about how you can do this kind of stuff, but sometimes you really should put limitations on yourself. You don't have to look at something and say, I have to do that because I've been told not to. Sometimes it's okay to accept that's not going to be very helpful. But if your party is determined to have a time-traveling adventure, these are the things that I did to make it at least somewhat cohesive. Now in hindsight, one of the things I genuinely would have done to change some things is take one of the players specifically and tell them, here's an event I need to happen. Could you do this for me? Yes, it is a little bit more railroady, but it brings more of the players in, and it lets things be a little bit more dynamic. Let them know, this event is probably going to happen. I need you to be okay with it. Are you okay with that? And can you rationalize that your player would be willing to do this? It creates a through line, makes that improv feel not go away, but also helps you keep things more in line and moving forward. Ultimately, time travel is just messy, and you'll have to accept that. So will your players. But if you guys can do that and you still want to run a time travel adventure, that's pretty much the best way to do it. Just accept that it's going to be a mess. And that's kind of the fun of it. You want to be able to enjoy in the absolute chaos that is D&D. And I can think of no other way to create chaos than messing with the timeline. So go out into the world and make it your own. And if you want to talk about some more weird ideas that you can do for your campaign, I have a video right here.